never question the thoughts that are in our own head, and we just take them for face value. So if I failed a test, straight away I'd be like, I'm a failure. Straight away if I'd done something, oh, I can't do this, I'm not able to do that. All that I can't, anything that is limiting you is a limiting belief. And I think just for so many of us, we're living by them and we don't question them, we don't challenge them. So we're all living 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, whatever, doing the same habits every single day. Is this a coincidence that I'm like running into the same toxic people?
Meet Hannah Ennis, a holistic wellness coach.
My background was all in mental health, so when I became a PT, combined physical health and now my background with mental health. People aren't dealing with what's going on the inside, and then they're affecting their relationship. Everyone's terrified to be hurt. They're all being like, I can't let him know that I'm into him, I can't let him know that whatever. And I'm just like, if you want a relationship to work, you both have to just meet each other where you're at.
You were saying this to me, you were trying to get help, that there was nowhere that would take you in Ireland, and that's why you had to go to Thailand.
So when I was 15, I think it was when I struggled first with like self-harm and depression. I had my first overdose at 17, and then I was in an outpatient unit, and you had to be someone, or you had to know someone to like get a place. And then I was going to counselling, and literally I was like, I think it was meant to be my last Christmas, and I ended up getting a different doctor that day. She asked me that question of like, do you trust yourself to like drive home today? And I was like, no, I don't. That's when my mum was called. She just held my hand and just said, look, if you're not ready to fight, let me fight for you. And it's something that I'll always remember. But sorry.
Before we start this episode, I would like to thank each and every one of you for listening to these episodes. If you could take a couple of more seconds out your time, share, like, subscribe, follow on whatever platform you're listening on. It would honestly mean so much to us and would help us grow the podcast. Now let's get straight to the episode. Thanks for coming on, Hannah.
Thank you so much.
For anyone who is listening and doesn't know who you are, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Hannah. I'm 27 at the moment, and I'm an online wellness coach. So I'd have more of a holistic style of coaching. I kind of look at the client as a whole. My background is all in mental health. So when I became a PT, kind of combined physical health and now my background with mental health, and we look at kind of everything for a client. So for me, when I was a PT, and we'll probably talk about like body image and stuff, I just felt like we were in this society that was like, get as lean as possible, as shredded as possible, and I kind of fell into that as well. So obviously when I was getting into the gym, that was like the biggest coping mechanism for me for like my own mental health, so I loved it. But when I was like with clients, I was kind of figuring out that it was so much more than just the body that they were looking for. Like it was their confidence, it was their self-worth, their self-esteem, their comfort zone, their anxieties. Like it was so much more. So when I was with my clients, I was like, there's a gap here that I'm like, there's something missing. And I'd obviously be talking to the girls, they might lose weight, gain weight, whatever it might be. But yeah, my passions were just like, tell me more. Like I need to understand what's going on. So when I was with them, we were kind of challenging their mindsets, overcoming their limiting beliefs, their self-sabotage. So yeah, I kind of was like, there's so much more to people than obviously just their body. So that's kind of when I started to step away a little bit more from fat loss and looking at a more holistic view of a person. So their mind, their body, their spirituality if they wanted, their mindfulness, like looking at their routines and just them as a person so they can go off and do whatever it is, not just a body goal.
And what was your reason behind it? Like what made you pick this career path? Were you in school and were like, oh, this is what I want to do?
No, I'm not gonna lie, I absolutely had no clue what I wanted to do. And I was always so envious of people who were like, I want to be a doctor when I grow up, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I feel like when you're in school as well, you think that you should know what you want to do. Like, you know, people are talking to your teachers, you know, what are you going to do after school, college? Hadn't a clue. And that freaked me out a little bit. And then I just think like everything does happen for a reason. And if there is anyone listening that's like, I feel a little bit stuck, like misdirection, I always say, is like redirection. And for me, I really struggled with my mental health in school, and it's something now that I was like, oh my God, when I missed school and I didn't get enough points to go to like in my leaving cert to go to college, and I thought that these things were like the end of the world. Little did I know, like going through all those struggles and my mental health and that kind of little road that brought me on is actually bringing me to the path that I'm on right now. So it's something I'm really grateful for. If there is anyone that's feeling like I don't have a clue what I'm meant to do, sometimes I just feel like that is probably the best place that you can be in. Sometimes having it too figured out is kind of closing doors for you as well.
Yeah, I feel like the fact that you're going into fitness, but then you're like, you'll get a client and you're focusing on their mental health and stuff like that. If you didn't go through what you did, you probably wouldn't be doing that. You probably would just be focusing on the 6-week transformation diet or whatever.
And look, there's nothing wrong with these. Like I always say, like there's a coach for everyone. Do you know what I mean? But I just found when people were coming to me, I was like, like your thoughts are so important.
Yeah.
So there's people coming to me and I was looking at them and they wanted to lose weight, but when I was actually talking to them, it was so much more than just losing weight. You know, they were like, I want to be confident. And I was like, okay, well, what does that mean? I want to be able to walk into a room confidently. I want to be able to put in boundaries. I want to be able to wear whatever I want. And all of these different things didn't actually have anything to do with losing body fat. You know, all the things that they were looking for, they could be doing right now. Like when we started to dive a little bit deeper, it was like, I want to be able to overcome my insecurities, even relationships. They were like, I want to be able to go for a relationship and go for a date. And I was like, but you don't need a body to do that. Like they thought that by getting leaner or losing weight, they'd be able to now do whatever they want to do. Like, I'll be happy when, or like, I'll be confident when. So it was really important when I was kind of seeing this. I was like, there's something missing here. So while I was working with them, I was like, let's do a little bit of mindset work. You know, like, let's figure out what this actually is. And I think even if it is a weight loss journey, if you are enjoying that process and you're not waiting till the end goal to be like, again, I'll be happy once I lose a little bit of weight. Because even for myself, like, I got myself stupid lean, fillers, Botox, the hair extensions, the ever, and I was like, I wasn't confident at the end. And I was like, you know, I'll just get more filler, I'll just get more extensions, I'll just lose more weight, and that has to fix me. And it just absolutely didn't. And I think there's it's such a conversation I'm so passionate about, because I really just feel like people are just looking at like social media and they're like, if I just buy the new this and I get my hair looking that way and I put a little bit more makeup on, I'll do the 6-week shred after Christmas, I'm going to get what I really feel like confident. I'm going to get self-worth, and it's just so much different. I just feel like if you can fix your inner world a little bit more, it's going to fix how you see everything outside.
So like, say if a client came to you and it wasn't really about losing the weight, it was like gaining the confidence, like what would you recommend, or what would you say, like? So
yeah, I think when I'd figure out like what's actually, you know, so many people, they say, I'll just lose the weight, as they said. And I'm like, hold on a minute, like, just talk to me. Like, what do you really want in life? And it's like, you know, their anxieties, they're so afraid to like step outside their comfort zone. It's the fear of failing, it's the fear of judgment, their perfectionism holds them back. Like, and that's something that I'd specialise in, is like their limiting beliefs. Like, why are you not reaching a goal? Because if you're not reaching a fat loss goal, you're probably not reaching, you know, your financial goals, your professional goals that you have in relationships. So it's so much more. And then when you can zoom out, like, I've had so many clients being like, I'm so annoyed at myself, I can never do this, I can never lose the weight, I can never do this, I can never step outside my comfort zone. And I'm like, okay, so we can fix one area, it's going to spill into everything, you know. So we'd start looking at their comfort zones, and even if it was in the gym or if it was outside, like going and get coffee on their own, like if they're terrified of, no, someone's going to laugh at me, this is going to happen, worst case scenario, like this, like little things like that, like tasks, how they speak to themselves, their self-talk, their confidence. So we'd kind of go through like morning routines, nighttime routines, whatever they need specifically for themselves to show themselves their capabilities and how to like not hold themselves back.
And then when you say like, so say for example, like with the limiting beliefs, what give us an example of certain limiting beliefs? Because I say there'd be other people listening and being like, do I have any of them? Is that why it's stopping me from achieving my goals 100%. Or doing certain things? So what would be some of the types of limiting beliefs then?
So your limiting beliefs, again, and this is like where I was at. You like, think about it. If you think in your head, you only know your voice, and we all love to think that like we're right. And one thing that I done for so many years was like, I thought my thoughts were facts. So if I said something about myself, I wouldn't question it. But if someone else said something to me, I'd be like, hold on a minute, that's not true. But we never question the thoughts that are in our own head, and we just take them for face value. So if I failed a test, straight away, I'd be like, I'm a failure. Straight away, if I'd done something, I can't do this, I'm not able to do that, I'm too lazy, anything that's limiting me, and they're not truth. So like, I was living my whole life like, if I got broken up with, I'd be like, I'm unattractive, I'm unlovable. These subconscious beliefs that are just like true experiences that you do have, they just kind of stay with you, and we never challenge them. So all these little things that were happening for me throughout my life started to like really engrave these limiting beliefs that I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not attractive, I'm not smart enough, I'm always going to be a failure. And everything I'd done, straight away, I'd be like, I can't do that. And I try and protect myself, and it's like, I can't do this. But when you tell yourself these things over and over again, you start living by these beliefs. And then I started to see that everywhere. I was like, I'm not even going to try to do that because I can't do it. I'm not even going to see if I like this. No way. And yeah, all the I can'ts, anything that is limiting you is a limiting belief. And I think just for so many of us, we're living by them and we don't question them, we don't challenge them. But so fun, once you start challenging those beliefs, you're like, oh my God, I've been living my whole life thinking I can't do something I absolutely can.
And then to change that, or like these beliefs, like what? Yeah. So what steps did you take to
I think
like,
challenge,
okay.
One thing that I do with all my clients is we challenge absolutely everything. And the minute, like, you don't even catch yourself doing it, like, there's so many things, even now, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that, I can't do this, I don't like it, like, whatever it might be. And I have to be like, if I even hear the word I can't anymore, I'm like, is that truth? Like, is that actually backed up by truth? So I used to think to myself, like, I'd always say, I'm not smart, I'm stupid, I'm uneducated, I'm this, that and the other, I'm such a failure. And as like when I was in school, I didn't go to school a lot with my mental health, and I missed exams, and I would have thought, as any child would, and going through your teenage years, you know, if you don't go to college, you're fucked. Like, you don't have a chance, you don't have this. And I got like so overwhelmed in my head, I was spiraling. So failing exams, even just one exam, and not going to school, not going to college, just had this belief in me that like that was set, that was your evidence, that's never going to be able to change. So I lived the rest of my life, even only till a few years ago, thinking, no, I'm still stupid, I'm not able to do this. And it was only the moment I caught it, I was like, okay, let's challenge that. Is it actually truth that because you failed one exam that you're a failure for the rest of your life? Like, no. And actually, when you start challenging the thoughts that are coming true, or like, is it actually truth for the rest? You didn't come out of the womb a failure. You know, you didn't come out of the womb not being able to do things. So just because of one experience that a lot of us run into, whether it's heartbreak, failing a business, something really tragic or whatever it might be, we end up living by them. And we think that, okay, well, because that happened to me, it has to be truth. So one thing I would do is challenge it, actually ask yourself the question, like, can it be changed? Can I try it again and have a new perspective on it? And 90% of the time, 100% of the time, you'll notice that it actually isn't truth at all. You don't have to live by these things.
Yeah, you had to say a lot of things to yourself in your head, and when you said that, when
like,
you're saying that, yeah, you're like, you do think like when someone, do you ever get someone turns around and be like, oh my God, you're doing unreal, or this and that, and you're like, are you talking to me?
Yeah, no.
Like,
but I think that's how, like, for me, my head, I never talked to anyone about things. I never like questioned them. I just took everything that was in my head as face value. And I'm so embarrassed to ever be like, I don't want to tell anyone this. I don't want to explain this to myself. So you just keep it in your head. And because you don't challenge it, and think of how many thoughts you have a day and you're giving out to yourself. It's like all my clients that I'm working with, it's like the negative self-talk, the inner critic. They're just like, every single day, every single minute, you look fat, you look ugly, you're not able, you're not capable. And all of a sudden, at the end of the day, if you're not catching them, think about how many of them are just spiraling in your head. And then you go to bed and you're like, God, that actually is truth. And you're seeking out evidence everywhere throughout the day to be like, that's true, that's true, that's true. And you just get up the next day and you do the same thing. So we're all living 10 years, 20 years, 15 years, whatever, doing the same habits every single day, not questioning it. And then you're living by it, and then you're wondering why your headspace is all over the place, you know?
Yeah, so what would you, like, say for you, like, when you wake up in the morning or whatever, would you, like, do you ever get people stand in the mirror and say things to themselves? Do you do any of that?
Do you know what? I will just, a coach, I will sit here and be like, yeah, they work. And they do, they probably do.
Yeah.
But like, as someone, like, one thing that I'm not big on is like getting up when you feel like shit and you don't want to be here, and your head is like, I'm not capable of these things. Like, getting up and looking yourself in the mirror and just being like, you're beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, you need a lot more of that. I think doing them things in journaling and actually like putting yourself out there and challenging your thoughts is really important, but like, you have to be doing the work also. And I feel like even something that I've done, I used to read all the self-help books, I would, you know, go to therapy, I'd do everything, and I thought I was super aware, but I wasn't taking the action against it. So it was little things, even like if I was going out on a night out, and we all have this strop and we're like, I hate how I look and I hate this, and I'd be like, you know what, I'm not going. And all of a sudden, like, or like in the gym, I'd be like, you know, I'm too fat to wear this, and I'm too ugly to wear, my back is hanging out, or whatever it might be. Every single time I was doing that, I was basically saying to myself, I was judging myself, I was basically saying, you don't deserve to be seen. Like, you need to hide, you need to put your clothes on, you can't go out, you can't look like you can't look the way that you do. But every time you're doing that, you're saying that you don't matter. Do you know that way? You're basically saying, like, stay you, this, that. Like, so I thought it was really important to take action on them things. So if you did have a thought in the gym being like, do you know what, cover up, you can't cover up. You know, if you're going out, it's like, there's so many nights that I'm like, I just want to stay at home, I feel uncomfortable, but I know that voice will only get bigger if I don't go out and I don't challenge it. So I have to go out, and then I'd be like, oh my God, I had a ball with my friends, really enjoyed myself. After 10 minutes, completely settled into the situation, I had a ball. And that's like one stack of evidence against that limiting belief or that like negative self-talk. Like, that's where I just think action is very important.
So you're basically saying that if you're thinking like, I'd be a bit like that when I'm in the gym.
Let's challenge it.
You know what? I'd be a bit like that in the gym. I'm like, oh no, I'll let go wear a hoodie or whatever. Or like,
no, and you know what? I'm saying it, like, be comfortable. Like, I've had clients, I'm not going to tell you straight away, like, take your top off and like go out and have, but like, no, I get it. But like, you do have to understand that like, your thoughts are so important.
Yeah.
Like, your thoughts literally create your actions. So every single time, like, I look at everything as a habit now. So if I have years being like, you're this, you're that, and I want to change that, if I'm sick of the way that I speak to myself, I'm sick of my quality of life, I know that my self-talk is holding me back, I have to do something. And sometimes reading a book and sitting here being like, talk to yourself nicely in the mirror, it's just not going to cut it sometimes. You know, you have to be doing them practices and reading your books and going to therapy along with like taking the action. And like every couple of days, maybe when you're in the gym, you'll get an experience where your negative self-talk comes so far into your brain and it's screaming at you. And they're the moments where you have to put the stuff, your affirmations, you have to put your books, you have to put everything you learned. And you're not going to get it right all the time, but just sometimes I'm like, do you know what, not today. And that's fine. But the next time I'm like, do you know what, this is only, that voice only going to keep going to get louder if I don't try and put pause in that. And it's hard.
I've noticed that. I feel like anyone who's listening is probably going to be like, there has been times where.
But I always even say to my clients, like, we're so afraid of other people's judgment. So it's like, I don't want to wear this because other people are going to look at me. So we often use other people's judgment as a reason as to why we won't do something. But when we're looking at other people's judgment, it's actually because we're judging ourselves. So I'm like, he's thinking this about me, she's looking at this, but it's only because I'm judging myself over them things. Like if I asked you now, like, what's my biggest insecurity? Sitting here.
I don't know. I don't think
no one knows.
You have any.
Like I could sit here and be like my ears, my mouth, my whatever, but looking at me, you would never know that.
Why do you honestly think that would they be your insecurities?
No, but but no, everybody has them, and it's only when you actually zoom out. And I just feel like we're all in our heads. So when you zoom out, and you think of it in a rational mind. You stop the spiral, and you're just going to be like, let me just zoom out. And let me just think about this. I'm walking into a gym and I hate my arms. You're walking into a gym, you hate your legs. But because I hate my arms, I'm looking at your arms. And I'm like, is she looking at my arms? But you're looking at my legs. And no one has a clue what anyone's insecurities are. So I'm walking in and I'm like, everyone's looking at my legs because I'm judging myself for my legs. Does that make sense? So if you can so now all of a sudden, like, you can't be in control of other people's opinions at all. I can't stop anyone else's opinion, but I can definitely control my opinion on myself. So anytime I see myself being like, oh, she's gonna look at me, he's gonna look at me, I'm like, okay, you're judging yourself. And then when I'm going back, I'm like, well, why am I so afraid of that? I can control how I talk to myself now. So now it's not an external thing, it's not a thing that someone else can control, it's something that I can now control. And then you have to challenge the voice, and you don't get it right all the time.
Yeah, it's mad. Like, the things that you'd be thinking about, no one's actually even...
No one
even cares or is even looking at.
And I love when you do go against... You know, like, we've all done it. Like, oh, fuck this. And you go and do it, and no one even said a thing. And they're the kind of moments that I'd live for. It's like, okay.
I would obviously get, like, moments where I'm thinking, no one's going to say anything, but they're thinking it.
They're thinking it.
Yeah. Like, I
think as well, like, if we keep going off, like, again, the evidence, if you keep waiting on other people to like you, and you keep waiting on other people to, like, give you approval and everything, you won't get far. You know, that way. So it's like you have to be able to, like, correct your own judgment on yourself, because you're like, no one else can actually matter right now. And if you can build your own self-belief and you can build your own judgment and your sense of self and your confidence, other people's opinions just don't matter. And I know they won't. Like, you know, if someone said something to you, you think it's the worst thing, but you probably tell them to shut up or shut the fuck up, and then you just move on. You know, like, I think the judgment of ourselves is actually worse than what other people can say to us.
Yeah, and if anyone even was to make a judgment, it'd probably be like for like 2 seconds and they forgot about it just straight away.
Yeah.
Like, no one actually thinks about you as much as you do about yourself.
But I think if you're already judging yourself over something and then someone does judge you on that, it hurts. And it's always going to hurt. But if you stop judging yourself,
that's why people,
so much. Yeah.
When people get offended, because that's probably obviously their insecurities.
It's a judgment of yourself. So I think when you can work on your own judgment, your own sense of self, build your self-belief, your self-worth, all these different things, you just bounce it back. You're like, that's a you problem. Like, it's nothing to do with me.
So, like, obviously then you said, like, clients... like self-sabotage, would that be obviously then the same thing then again on if they have these limiting beliefs?
Yeah, I think the root of self-sabotage is your limiting beliefs. And I swear, I think we spoke about before, we were talking about books, the best book in the whole entire world is The Mountain Is You by Brianna West. Have you read it before?
Yeah.
And it blew my mind.
Actually say that again. I think it was
The Mountain Is You by Brianna West. It is so good.
I think I listened to it on Audible.
No, you probably did.
Yeah.
But so I lived my whole life in, like, self-sabotage mode, hadn't a clue, like, all these big fancy words, limiting beliefs, hadn't a clue. So I'm here being like, is everyone else like this? What's going on? And your self-sabotage is like how you hold yourself back. And when I actually started to think about it, I was like, God, you'd get a job opportunity, you'd get a really good opportunity to do X, Y, and Z, but you never take it. And it was like looking at your life, and I was like, why am I not moving forward? And I'd love to sit here and say it's because of him, it's because of I've no money, it's because I don't have these opportunities. But really, when you actually sit down with it, the reason that you're not moving forward was actually because of yourself. I think that's a hard pill to like kind of swallow when you know that you're not moving forward because it is yourself. And then I was like, okay, well, what is actually holding me back? You know, and that, when you sit with that, it's like, God, well, I'm actually terrified of failing. So that's why I never opened that business. I'm actually terrified of other people's judgment. So I'm not going to the gym to reach my body goals and my fitness goals because of other people. You know, it was my lack of self-belief, my negative self-talk, perfectionism. You know, we always hear like, I'll only start when things are perfect, I'll start when everything is fine. So when I started to, like, I was naming these and I was like, fuck, that's me. And I was like, these are all in my control. Like, really, when I looked at it, I was like looking as hard as I could for a really good valid reason as to why I wasn't achieving anything, and like there just wasn't anything. Like, everyone was like, here's an opportunity, here's this, here's whatever you need, go take it, and I still wasn't doing it. Like, my anxiety was taking over and I was terrified of like, what if this happens, worst case scenario, and it just snowballed, and that's why I wasn't reaching anything. So that's what I would look at is self-sabotage. And not like every client I work with, again, they might come and it's about their body, and then they might have a goal with their professional life or even relationships. I'm like, why? They're like, I really want a relationship. And I'm like, okay, well, like, what's holding you back? Oh, well, I don't go on any dates. I hate myself. I never actually do anything for myself. I've so disconnected from myself. I'm terrified if they won't like me, so I don't even try. Like, there's so many different things. And I'm like, so that's why we're not in a relationship. It's not because you're not finding a partner. Or if you don't love yourself, you're probably going to find that you're in these toxic relationships all the time. And you're like, why me? Like, why is this a coincidence that I'm like running into the same toxic people? So when you can actually mirror it back, you're like, oh, this is actually because I don't love myself. I have no respect for myself. I have no self-worth. So you're attracting in what you're already giving to yourself. Does that make sense? Yeah. And we've all been there.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I've listened to a lot of that, like, on YouTube, and I was on it.
No, and it's so hard because I wish I could point fingers, and I'm not even joking, at other people to be like, you're the reason I ended up this way, and you're the reason, and like all the toxic relationships and the cheating and the crying and the failing and the whatever it might be. And actually, if you can sit back and say, honestly, the reason why I'm not like reaching whatever I want is because of myself, you can 100% guarantee that self-sabotage is at play. And there's ways of fixing that. Like, if you're like perfectionism, like even for me, I would have been like, God, I can't, even my body. I was like, I put so much of my self-worth on my body image. I had no self-worth, didn't like who I was, hated the skin, I hated everything about myself. But I figured that I could get a lot of my self-worth through attention or validation, or even just people complimenting me if I was in a smaller body, or I had the makeup done and I had my long extensions and I looked a certain way. But unfortunately, that is just, you can't keep that up. Like, you can't look like that all of the time.
Yeah.
So the only way that I felt good about myself was that when I was looking a certain way. But I couldn't keep it up. And all of a sudden, when the lashes had to come off, I was like having breakdowns. Or when the extensions had to come out, I couldn't see myself for who I was because I didn't like myself. So I was constantly in relationships, or even like connection. Like, I couldn't have connection with myself. So I found that I was in after parties, you know, doing whatever, because it wasn't the drugs and the drink, it was actually what they were giving me. So there's all these different situations. I was like, okay, something's not right here. So when you can start giving that, I've always said it, even start here, when you can start working on the inside, everything around you physically changes. And that's kind of what I'm trying to show people how to do.
Yeah, I feel like because you had to work so much on yourself.
Yeah.
And you learned about all these things. Now you can teach other people, like your clients.
Yeah.
Where like a different or a normal personal trainer wouldn't have all this information or all the knowledge and that you're after.
No, like, there's nothing as well. I think this is where you find your niche. There's absolutely nothing wrong. If I wasn't a PT, I wouldn't have been, like, I wouldn't have gotten into what I'm doing now. Before that, I was a makeup artist, and I found that I was like struggling with my image. That's where like my whole body image issues happened. The hair, the makeup, I couldn't look at myself, so that was added into it. And then before that was my mental health. My mental health has always been a huge struggle. So everything just throughout my life has kind of led me to a point now. And then mindset was so important. So, like, that's why I was even saying, like, if you feel stuck, it's like, I just feel like so passionate that these things happen for a reason. And like, figure, like, go with this sometimes, because you'll get the answers at the end of it. You know that I mean?
So like, with your routine now and stuff, like, where do you, for you to make sure that you don't speak to yourself like that again or anything like that, do you have like a specific routine where you're like, say you get up in the morning and you're like, right, okay, I'm going to go on a walk. But then you might have something in the back of your head saying, no, just stay in bed. Or like, how do you have like a strict disciplined routine where to make sure you keep your head on track and everything? Because I feel like when I'm looking at your content, you seem so disciplined. Like, even the other day you put up like even the other day you put up like, oh, you were having a bad day and you didn't want to move or do this, but you still got up and you were journaling. I started journaling for a few weeks and then that went in the bin.
Yeah. No, and I think that's like, that's something that I always want to like speak about. Like, I was literally speaking about this week. It's like this whole healing journey or whatever else, it's not easy. And I feel like you can look at people and they're like, breath work, yoga, meditation. It's like the easiest thing. It's not. Like, I hate journaling. Like, I've 3 years of journals that I won't ever look at. Like, the most difficult times of my life, I just can't I can't. Do you know what I mean? And every single day I wrote, I was like, I hate this. I felt uncomfortable. I felt icky. I didn't like it. Even doing meditation, I'm sitting there, I feel like I'm about to combust. Like, I find it so agitating. Like, there's so many things that I just want to, like, it's not easy. And it never is. But I think where I'm at the moment, it's like, I think some people as well, they're like, oh, you're very woo-woo, you're very deep, or, you know, we have this whole, like, idea of, like, journal meditation is just, like, this kind of thing.
But I feel like did anyone say that to you? Or you
all the time. Like, even, like, family and stuff like that. Come here, slagging, like, we're Irish, like, it is what it is. But I just, like, on a deeper level, it's like, I was so suicidal. I was so depressed. I was doing everything that everyone else is doing. I was like, I can't go back to that. So my choice is healing. So when I'm sitting there and I'm like, I can see it happening, I'm playing out, I'm like, I either get up and do one hard thing, which is going to make me feel a little bit icky, go to the gym, do whatever, but I'm not going back there. And that's my choice that I always have to make every day. And maybe some people's are a little bit different, but healing for me wasn't this, I just want to, like, get into journaling and be this wellness girl. Like, that wasn't ever my journey. And I hate it for the most part. I hate going to the gym. Like, I love how I feel after. Like, everything I do, I look at it now as an exchange, because if I could keep going off my emotions and I keep going off how I'm feeling, I'm not motivated all the time. I'm not happy all the time. My head is the worst place to be 90% of the time. But I'm just at a place now where I'm not letting it dictate the rest of my life. So I have to just keep going on, like, right, well, it's like an exchange. If I go to the gym, I don't want to go. I don't want to get out of bed. Don't want to look at anyone. I just want to avoid. I want to isolate. I want to give in to what's so familiar, which is that negative headspace. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, right, what are you getting out afterwards? If you don't go, and that's my version of challenging myself, and I have to do that. I had to do that for years. Now it gets a little bit easier, but at the start it was like every single thought, every single day, like hammering it into me. Like, and again, I don't always do it, but I just know, like, that exchange. Like, if I don't do it, I'm going back. And I just can't go back.
So have you, like, meditated every day and journaled for, like, 3 years straight? Obviously, I know you're human. You're not a robot. There's going to be days where you're going to just have a really bad day and not do that.
Absolutely.
But,
and, like, that's okay. Like, I always feel like sometimes, like, I've gone through so many breakdowns in my life, but, like, you'll come out of it, like, you'll have your breakthrough. Do you know that way? Or, like, if you don't get it right, it's like not to give out to yourself that you didn't hit your steps and you didn't write in your journal. And it's like, there's no right or wrong. I think when you do look on social media, it's like, God, she has this 4-step, 10-step morning routine and she's doing this and she's doing that. And it's like, that's not going to suit everyone.
That's a good day. That's that person's
joking?
Good day.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, even when you're doing your breathing and your meditation, like, you might just find one thing of that works for you. Like, I don't sit at home doing 2 hours of bloody breath work. I'd be like, again, I find it still so hard, but I just know that I feel better after it. So if I keep living my life on how I feel now and in the moment, I probably won't do anything. So I have to keep telling myself, well, how will you feel after? Probably 90% better. If you're giving out about feeling depressed and anxious, then you're like, you can either sit in it and allow for it to happen, or you can give yourself a chance.
Yeah, so, and you'll feel 10 times better after all of it.
But you don't.
It is sometimes hard to think of it like that.
Yeah.
You've obviously trained yourself to. Yeah, I feel like sometimes I was really good with going to the gym, and then I had, like, a flu, and then another flu 2 weeks later. It was
love that.
Great. So now I feel like, because it was such a long gap, I'll go and I won't go, and it's hard to, you know, when you get into a good routine. So I'm finding it a bit. Getting that so now.
Trying to get that back, but just have, like, the compassion as well. Just like it's okay. Like, the gym's not going anywhere, and we often think, like, if I missed one day, then I, like, the fuck it attitude. But I think even over the past few years, I feel like once you become aware over something, I'm like there's so much of my life that I just was so unaware and I was making mistakes, and, like, fine, that's cool. But now that you have awareness, or you're learning about something, or, like, if I'm not doing something, I know I'm self-sabotaging. Like, I'm the biggest avoidant ever. I'm the biggest isolator. Like, when things go wrong, I just want to push everyone away, and that's just something that I'd always do. So now when I know I'm doing that and I have awareness over that, that's a pattern that I do all the time, I'm like, okay, well, you have 2 options. You can sit in it, but what are you going to get after it? Nothing. Or else you can stop doing the fucking thing that you're doing all the time and try and actually do something else. And I don't get it right all the time. Still an avoidant, but, like.
So do you, like, so I think we were talking about this before we started the episode. So, like, when you were saying avoidant, if you're avoidant in your relationships, are you avoidant?
Been a problem.
Are you avoidant in everything else that you're doing? I didn't realise.
Yeah, like, obviously in your relationship.
I feel like we're, in case someone doesn't know what we're on about.
Yeah, it's like, what is this? So for me, it actually started. I didn't know. There's obviously avoidancy in, like, your relationships and as a whole. Yeah. But I think for me, when I was struggling with my mental health, one thing that I started to do was I just didn't want to be around people. So I would avoid. So if something felt uncomfortable or I felt anxious in a situation, I'd avoid or I'd isolate. I'd try and get away from the room, just be on my own. And then when you're struggling with your thoughts and you don't want to do anything, and also I've spent so much of my life now being on my own that it has just become so comfortable, even though it's negative and it can be quite toxic and you shouldn't always have to be on your own. I have just spent a lot of my time. So even when I'm going through something and everyone's like, speak about it to your friends, that just isn't my first point to call at this point, because I've spent so many years not doing that, suppressing and all these different things. So when things go a little bit iffy for me, or I feel like my headspace is a little bit all over the place, my first thing to do is I just want to be on my own. I don't want to talk to anyone. I'll put the phone down, don't speak to anyone. And yeah, in relationships then you can see that happening where like you just don't text them back. Or it's like you'll pop up every few, like even my friends now, they're like, oh, here she is, don't reply in the group chats, don't do this, don't do that. You know, so it is a habit that, and I still struggle with that, but I know about it. So I'm trying really hard, whether it's a romantic partner or whether it's with my friends, or even like, don't really let it affect work. But that's how I know, like if you cannot let it affect one area, you can definitely not let it affect others, but you're choosing to. Do you know what I mean? And I definitely am just like, right, friends and family, see you later.
Yeah, I do be... Yeah, so in case anyone does not run about, it's like attachment styles with like in your love, partner relationships, and then like friendships. So what ones are they? I think I had a friend too.
We're different, aren't we?
I think I'm a mixture of everything.
No, yeah, and you know,
because you know what, I didn't realise avoidant can be in. I'd be the type, I don't reply in any group chats.
Do you know?
The girls be like the girls have to mention me to get my attention.
That's me, I know, yeah.
So anxious attachment style, secure attachment style, disorganised and avoidant.
We have a few more. What's the last one?
Disorganised and avoidant.
Right, we're all the above.
I think I'm do you know what? I think I'm anxious and avoidant.
Yeah, so absolutely.
I'm a bit of both. And then there's obviously a bit of... But if anyone looked this up, like some of this is a bit mental.
Yeah, it's a bit heavy as well. Like
some of it is in like for the anxious one, jealousy, over possessiveness and neediness. No. This is
we've
like,
all done psycho stuff though, so I'm not gonna. That is probably accurate. Like,
yeah, but like it doesn't have to be to a certain extent. Like, if anyone was to look it up online, it's like there's questions, and then there's like a number thing that you can do, and you can be a bit of everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't need to be one extreme
and live by it,
or whatever.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean if anyone is anxious attachment style that you're a psychopath. But and anyway, so what did you say you're more the avoidance?
I'd be avoidant. I noticed I was avoidant in general in day to day. So, but that was an emotional response. So when I feel like emotional distress, I go to avoid. Which is self-sabotage. Like I'm holding myself from probably talking about my problems, from like figuring things out. That was my form of self-sabotage. But in romantic relationships, in my first relationship, I would have been very anxious. It was my first love. I was like, oh my God, I'm head over heels. We're going to get married. We're going to have kids. We're going to do this. Where are you? What are you doing? I want to be on your hip. Like that kind of... And you don't realise how like when you're spending so much time with someone, you're learning what love is. And you also, like me at that time, I had no self-worth, didn't like myself. I was struggling with everything at the same time. So this person... It wasn't even just about him. It was everything he was giving me. So when he wasn't around, do you ever like sit with someone and you don't even talk, but you just need them there for what they're giving you? Do you ever get like that? Whereas it's like sometimes I could be with a boyfriend and I'm like, I just needed you there for what you were actually giving me, not because I actually wanted you there. Even friends, like if I just want to feel a little bit more connected, but then they open their mouth and I'm like, oh, I don't even want to be with anyone else. You know, it's what they were giving me, not actually them. So you have to kind of ask yourself them sort of questions. So first relationship, I was so anxious. I was the psycho. I was like, what's going on? Do you love me? I need reassurance. Now looking back, he was probably a bit more of an avoidant, which kind of makes sense because when someone's pulling back, that makes you want to pull in even more because you need reassurance to be like, what's going on? But then because of that, I was so brokenhearted. I was like, no one's ever going to fucking touch me again. No one's going to da-da-da, this whole thing. So then in my next relationship, I subconsciously fell into such an avoidant role that I like never gave him reassurance. He didn't know where he stood with me, didn't know what was going on. Like I would never give anything away because I was so afraid of someone hurting me again. So I became the complete opposite. I became my last relationship. So now even that's something I'd have to struggle with. Is like, it's okay to talk about things. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to let them know that like you want to be with them. Like it's a good thing to do. But I'm so in my head of like, if you say that to them, they're going to leave you. They're going to end up like, that's just a trigger that I have obviously from my first relationship. So these things can kind of follow. So I've gone from one to the other. And now I'm hoping I'm bringing my way back to secure. But there's a lot of work, that you kind of have to.
And do you think like obviously someone else probably listening to that being like, you probably didn't like him?
Yeah, but this is the hard part.
Did you think
so
it was just
here,
the attachment style, or do you?
I think we gain these attachment styles as a way to, like, again, I think if you're anxious
Protect
and stuff,
yourself.
Yeah, I do. Like, I became an avoidant not because I wanted to. Like, I would have loved kids and families and all these sort of things, but for me to say that to someone, and maybe in my last relationship, I felt like that was taken away from me. So that's why I was so anxious, and I gave everything to this person, and then they hurt me and they broke my heart. So I was like, hold on. Subconsciously you start this, I'm never going to let anyone do that again. And I didn't go out of my way to be nasty or go out of my way to hurt someone, but when I seen someone then kind of gravel after me a little bit, or they were telling me that they'd love me, I'm loving it. But inside I'm like, it's like an alarm bell being like, something's not right here. Something's going to happen.
He's lying.
So I'm like, don't give it away. Like, you can't. So like, even like my last relationship, he was like, I don't fucking know if you like me half of the time or you don't. And I'm like, good, keep it that way. But deep down, I'm like, I want all of these things. So that was really important that I work on that, because he's going to then become really anxious if I'm not obviously letting him know that I actually want to be with him, like, or I want to have kids, or I want all of these things. So you have to, like, it got to a stage where I'm like, right, you can't keep painting everyone with the same brush, and you can't act this way in a relationship either. So like, if you are going to be in a relationship, you need to be able to meet each other where you're at, communicate, be vulnerable, open yourself up. You can't be half in, half out. And that's what I feel like an avoidant is kind of doing, just to protect themselves, you know. And I'm sure anxious are doing the same thing. They just need reassurance to know that they're all right and everything's okay, so they can protect what's going on or what's important to them.
So do you think that stems up from like previous relationships, or?
Now I'd wonder, like, I'm trying to go through all the years, I'm like, why was I so anxious then in my first? But I was such an anxious child. Like, I'd be sitting here on my knees, even now I have to fidget with things, and I couldn't speak to people, and my leg would be going, and, you know, I couldn't do things on my own. So think about it, when a boy then comes into your life and he's like, I love you, I think you're amazing, and I'm sitting here being like, I hate myself. I'm like, oh my God, you're amazing. You're going to give me everything I need. So I can imagine that's why I became so anxious, because it wasn't actually him leaving. It was that if he left, I don't have anything to give myself. Do you know, that way I was getting so much of my worth and so much of reassurance and everything that I actually needed that I couldn't give myself. So actually now when I look back, it wasn't even him. Do you know what I mean? He was just the trigger. It was everything that he actually gave me was what made me so anxious. But the minute then you can start giving that back to yourself, and you can reassure yourself, and you're in a situation being like, no, just because he didn't text you back, it doesn't mean he's off with someone else, or it doesn't mean that this is happening, and you can calm yourself down. When you can become a little more connected to yourself and back yourself, you're not relying on them that much. And you don't need them in that way that you did before.
I feel like if someone is really anxious and constantly, like, you can scare someone away.
Absolutely, yeah.
Especially if it's only like a say like the start of a relationship and you're constantly hounding them, like, you might, the person might be like, what the fuck,
what's actually going on?
This is a bit much.
But I see it now, like, even the whole dating thing. I'm just even looking at, like, my friends and stuff, and I'm like, God, it's like all I see is just people, like, you can't, everyone's so afraid to be vulnerable, everyone's so afraid, they've all been hurt, and everyone's terrified of, like, being a psycho and not. So, like, I could be sitting here so anxious, but I'm about to combust, I'm checking his socials, I'm doing all these different things, but I can't let him know that, because he's going to run away. And I'm like, people aren't dealing with what's going on the inside, and then they're affecting their relationships, and everyone's terrified to be hurt. They're all being like, I can't let him know that I'm into him, can't let him know this, can't let him know that, whatever. And I'm just like, if you want a relationship to work, you both have to just meet each other where you're at and be secure and be vulnerable and be able to communicate about these things. I just think this generation just can't seem to get there, you know?
Yeah, it's all like a chasing game or something, isn't it?
Yeah. But, like, we've all, like, come here, we've all gotten there. I think as you get older and you've gone through your own experiences, like, now I'm just like, I'm done with that shit. Like, if I meet someone now, I'm just like, okay, I already know that I have avoidancy in me, and next person, I need to be able to be vulnerable. I need to be like, do you know what? Hurt me if you want, because I've now protected myself and I've backed myself, and I'm in a really good place that, like, someone else can't hurt me as they once did. Whereas in my head years ago, I was like, right, well, you've hurt me once, someone else can do that again to me. Do you know that way? I was like, this can happen again, but it can only happen if I allow it.
And we're like, I feel like you know so much about all these different things.
Trauma.
We're like, so obviously you've done counselling and stuff like that. Where did you, like, do you feel like it was therapy and counselling that you learned all this from, or was it like books, YouTube, online? Like,
yeah, I think, like, I am such a fan for therapy. I think therapy is, like, so important. Even if you feel like you don't have a problem, like, go to therapy. Yeah. Everybody has so much things that they need to talk about, and I think even for myself, like, I put myself in a box. Like, I was looking at other people and I was like, I can't be depressed, I can't be suicidal, I can't do all these things. I was like, I don't need therapy, I'll be fine. Like, I thought you had to be this certain type of person to be able to go to therapy. I was like, I don't want to waste anyone's time. And it was all these little problems that were happening for like a lot of us that I was like, probably really could have benefited from therapy, but I allowed for everything to escalate and multiply until it got really, really bad. And then I didn't just need therapy, I needed bloody rehab or centres and medication. And it's something that I'm so passionate about, to let people know that you don't have to be a certain type of person with these huge problems or have this physical look of what you think in order to go to therapy. And if you can help yourself right at the start, like, go. But therapy is so good for just understanding like what's actually going on. If there is a problem, I think that's great. I have to say though, I found talk therapy really important, to actually just get everything like off your chest and talk about it
with your friends.
But like you do that anyways. But then it came to a point, being honest, where I was like, I've talked about this for years now and I've written about it in my journals. I'm like, what do I do next? And that's, I suppose I was just ready to be able to like, I need action. I need someone to tell me, right, if you're struggling with this, this is what you need to do. Do you know that way? Like, if you're struggling with your anxious attachment or you're depressed and your negative self-talk's happening, like, what do you need to do? And I think I got enough from therapy that I was like, no, I'm ready now to go on my own and just like challenge things with like action. And you'll only do that through like awareness. And I've made so many mistakes of like repeating the same habits and the same patterns, but I just know that you can keep repeating the same things, but the outcome's always the same. So like, even now, like, if I get really stressed, I'm like, fuck, I'll just go out for a few drinks and I'm going to repeat the same pattern that I did a few years ago. I have to just start like and question myself and be like, do you really want to do that? Like, you know what's going to happen with the outcome. I think to even be in a place where like you can look at your past as evidence, like if you're doing the same things all the time, or you're in every single relationship, they're ending up the same way, what is going to change unless you take a bit of action to make sure that your next relationship isn't going to be the same way?
Yes.
You know that way?
I feel like sometimes people don't realise it's actually them.
Self-sabotage.
Like I feel like I'd even know, say, people who are like going through these bad relationships and meeting these bad people constantly and not even realising that it's them or the people that they're going for, and they probably just need to work on themselves.
Yeah,
so
and I think it's hard. I think when you go through, like, I was in such like a victim mentality of like, it has to be them, and like
they're all pricks,
they're all this, and there's a reason why. I remember going through everything in school and everything else, being like, why me? I'm the one that's after losing school and they all get to go, and it was everything like, it was me. Like, it was nothing to do with anyone else, it was me. And I think, like, especially even with therapy, like, there were so many years where I never took the help that was given. I didn't really take anything they were saying on board. I just thought I couldn't be fixed. And it was actually because you can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped. I think there was so much going on for me at that moment that I was like, I don't want to help, I just want to run away, I just want to do whatever. And the minute I became a little more accepting of like, okay, Hannah, you're in the same situation again a few years later, life is not changing. Like, nothing's going to change unless you change. And then when I was able to question things and be like, oh, I'm a bit of the problem here. Like, I can get the fancy doctor, I can have medication, I can go to all the therapies you want, I can read all the books, but like, nothing is actually changing unless you're willing to take action on those things. I think it was just the reality of like, I was becoming 23, 24, I'm now 27, and I was like, actually nothing, the evidence is there. And I just feel like for me, I've just spent so much of my life in my feelings and believing my thoughts. And I was like, if I keep continuing just believing what I'm thinking, I can't be right, and I'm not right. So I had to just go off the evidence. And I think even just having that black and white thinking has just changed everything. Now I question everything. I'm like, is that like really real? Or is like there evidence to back that up? Or like, what are you doing? Do you know that way? So now when I went back to therapy, I actually took everything they'd done on board. And oh my God, my life changed completely because I was actually working with them. And I see loads of people and they're like, therapy doesn't work for me, journaling doesn't work for me, like, these things just don't work. So I can't judge everyone, but I'm like, I would often wonder, is it because they're not at a place where they're willing to actually either accept what's going on, if they're willing to fix it, if they're in a victim mentality like I was, or if they just don't want to be helped, you know?
Yeah, so you felt like obviously the first time that you went, that you weren't actually, like, you knew what you needed to do, but you weren't doing it. Yeah,
I think like everything was spilling in. I think for me, my head was just so bad that when people were sitting to me and they're just like, tell me about your childhood, tell me about like this, I was like, you don't understand, you don't get what's going on, like, you don't know what's going on here. And I will say, like, for anyone who is going to therapy, you, first of all, like, I was with a counsellor, kind of like a teacher, and we just didn't gel. Like, I couldn't understand what she was saying, she couldn't, like, we just didn't gel. And I feel like just to tell people, like, you're allowed to change. Like, I changed my counsellor, I was like, I'm not getting on, and you're paying so much money as well. I changed, and I swear to God, since I changed that moment, that counsellor changed my whole life. It's like a bad teacher. You get one good teacher and it does change. So if you're paying that money, by the way, go in and swap your counsellor if you need. There's so many of them. But yeah, I think I was just so in my head, and you think you know better. You know, so when people were trying to help me and they're like, go for a walk, or like even now looking back, I'm like probably going out every single weekend and drinking and drugs and probably going back to the ex and probably doing this. They're not great for me, but in my head, you know better. You know, and I just thought like nothing can fix me. So because I had that block already, no matter what I got given to me, I wasn't ever going to take it. So the minute I was like, okay, something's not right here, I have to just accept what's going on a little bit more, maybe accept that I am a part to play in this. And it's okay, like if you don't have it figured out, and it's okay if you don't know what's going on, but like owning that. I think my ego is just so big that I was like, no, I can't accept that, I can't say that. So yeah, I think counselling became so much more easier when you actually accept what's going on too.
And with the journaling then, so like if anyone was to be like, how do you feel like that has helped you, or why should anyone journal?
Yeah, I think when I speak to people about it, or I'll try and get all of my clients, like we do journal work every single week, and some people are like, I fucking hate it, and some people are like, oh my god, I never gave this a go, and now it's like, it's great. But I think having self-awareness over like what's going on is so important. So when I've had clients and they're literally just like, I don't know why I do this, like I'm in the same situation again and again and again, I'm like, well, have you asked yourself them questions? And we don't. I think when we get to a certain age, we just accept that that's the person that we are, that's the way that we think. And at that age, any age, like when you're an adult, your beliefs are already kind of formed. You don't really question, you're just like, that's who I am. If I'm bad at something, I'm going to be bad for it the rest of my life. If I'm good at something, that's me. And it's like, God, you can actually change your whole life around if you just change how you think. So by doing the journaling, like when I started, I hated it. I journaled every single, I think I have 6. My whole mental health, I think I started journaling maybe 5 years ago. And I was like forced. So what I used to do is I would write like a daily diary entry. Today is Monday. This is what's going on.
And when you say force, was this like?
This is like I had to like everyone was like you need to do something for yourself, which is fair. Like you need to be able to put your thoughts on paper. And I had a really big struggle in like opening up and speaking. So I found that actually what I used to do is I'd write in my journal and I'd bring it to my therapist. So I would give it to her and she would read my journals to be able to like provoke some conversation in me. Because what I was doing is I'd have loads of things that were going on, but when she was sitting there being like, tell me, I was like, no, I'm okay. Everything's fine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I couldn't, like, I felt like I was wasting her time. I felt really, like, overwhelmed. You know when you have something...
So you couldn't get the words out?
I couldn't get it out. And I was like, do you know, I'm wasting my time here. So what I would do is I was like, look, I have my journal. I'm going to keep doing this, like, homework and just write every single day. And it was so interesting because some days I'd go in counselling and I'd be like, I've had the worst week ever. But then when I read through my journal, I probably only had 1 or 2 really bad days, but the rest were really good. So it gave me such a perspective, being like, you're judging this whole week off one day when you actually had really good days. Or vice versa. Like if I had a really good day and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. She's like, but what about Tuesday and Wednesday? Like what was going on for you there? I'm like, oh, actually, like we'll have a little chat about that. But I just started personally with like going through things that were like bothering me. So the day to day, like when I was deep in my mental health problems, every day was a problem. Every day there was something. So that was handy in a sense because I actually had something to talk about. But now if I feel I might go through actual journal prompts. So if I'm dealing with like my body image, I'll start talking about that. I'll ask myself a few questions on that. If it's self-worth, if I'm getting in a relationship, I'm like, why is that bothering me? If it's I want a new business venture, I'm like, what's holding me back? Okay, fear of failing, fear of judgment. I'll start doing a little bit of journal work on that to be like, okay, well, what can I do now moving forward? You know? So
like if you were to say, what would you write in it in the mornings, in the evenings? I
journaled every single day, like killed me by the way, but I journaled every single day for about 3 years, 4 years. And that was like repetitive. If I wrote one sentence or I wrote 3 pages every single day, I had to just write something. And it got now in like, I know it's hard, but it's like it just became such a habit that every day I'd have a coffee or every day I'd start my morning. Some point in the day, it didn't matter, but I had to write something. And by me even just putting the word hi or me writing 3 pages, I still reprogrammed my brain to think that this is a habit that I do every single day. And some days I'm flat out in my notes section. Probably everyone is. But like I'll be on a walk and I'm like, that's now my other journal. So I'm like tap, and get it out of my head, get it away. And it works. Like we often wonder like, why is my head like so overwhelmed? I have a million things to do. Like we're not invincible. And it doesn't have to be this big traumatic event that happened. And maybe it is. If there's something that you're holding on to that you keep revisiting and you keep going back, maybe it is a good chance to like I think one that I always do with my clients is an inner child. You can do meditation. But the journal work is so good. To kind of go back to all the things that we've done as a child, that like all these like shitty things at exes, school, bullying, whatever struggles that you've gone through, and actually just see it in the eyes of like your younger self, and it's so healing, and it's so, you can kind of give a bit more compassion, but you can then just kind of close that chapter. Like there's so much baggage that's on all of us that we just like, even stress, we're all just so used to handling high levels of stress that we just get on with our day. So if you can have like a little tool or an outlet where you can just offload a little bit of that, I think that can be really good.
That's, and where did you, like, because obviously you done fitness, so was this all from reading books and listening to know that, obviously, to work on your inner child?
No, this is all, by the way, I was, like, at the start of my journey, even in school, like, I hadn't a clue about any of this, so this is only since, obviously, thinking, it's all added up, I suppose, over the few years, and I think because I've struggled with my mindset, it's been my goal to, like, figure out that, like, why I went through all of that, like, why this happened. I don't understand why brains can be this way. I don't know, like, there has to be a reason. So I think that's what's really kind of sparked something. Even now, I'm so lucky I get to work with clients and I can figure them out. But I think it is so important to kind of see what it actually is that's really holding you back and to figure that out. And yeah, I think because of my own mental health, that's really sparked the whole mindset side of things, to question these things, because I just don't think it's fair that we have to live the rest of our lives like not reaching our full potential and being miserable and suicidal and not going for things that we want and not stepping outside comfort zones. And I just feel like that is something that we can all work on improving and changing, and obviously with tools and education and all these things, they're available, and I just want more people to have that.
Yeah, and I was saying this only to you, like, on Instagram the other day, like, obviously because we're from the same area, and we would have been like, not like, I would have known you from friends of friends, and I always would have looked at you like, oh, she's stunning. I would have never ever imagined looking from the outside that you were actually struggling.
Really?
Like, it's crazy, like that I didn't even think there was anything ever. See the way you're saying, like, you were probably like saying things in your head that there's something wrong there, or you don't like this or that about, like, you were struggling with your body image. I honestly, anytime I looked at you, I'd be like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. Our body is unreal. Like, I have one of the girls always text me being like, text her and ask her what gym says she's wearing.
We love that.
Like, so, and you actually think you know her. You know Hannah O'Sullivan?
Oh yeah. No way.
Like, I actually never spoke to Hannah. I was like, you need to text her. But like, honestly, like, it's mad to think that, like, someone could actually have all these thoughts going through their head.
I think everybody, like, that's the biggest thing for me. Like, I spent so much of my life thinking, I'm not like this. Like, there has to be a physical look, there has to be whatever, and there was that. So I never actually accepted maybe I could be a person that would feel that. Yeah. But then also, as I said at the start of this, you believe the thoughts that are in your head. So I was like, no, this is just my path. This is just who I am. Like, you know, everyone else probably thinks this way. And I never opened up about it. I never questioned it. So that was another part of everything. And then I think it all happened so quick. So it's like, God, I'm just like, then you're in it and you're trying to, like, cope. So you're trying to just, every day just goes into the next. And then, as I said, if you're not dealing with your thoughts, think about it. I probably have like 10 years worth of intrusive, negative, self-limiting, critical thoughts that they don't just go away overnight. You know, I hope to get to a place that, like, they just go, but, like, I'll always say it isn't a journey that you're just going to wake up one day and you're going to be like, I love myself and everything's amazing. Like, you're going to be triggered and you're going to have to challenge these things. And I don't think that that's a side of Instagram that, like, you'll see. You know, like, when you see the journal and the meditating and the counselling and stuff, like, it's healing, if that's what you want to call it. It's messy. Like, self-development, it's like the biggest catchword. It's like, read your self-development, and it's the business that I'm in, but I'm not going to take away that, like, there's a lot of really hard learnings and going through the uncomfortableness, and whether it's your body image or showing up how you want, like, that's hard. It's like shedding an old layer of yourself and trying to now become someone that you don't know. Like, there's parts of me now that even as I'm trying to step into someone as far away as the person I used to be, that person that I used to be is just so familiar to me. So, like, that girl who was sitting at home and she was crying and who only had herself and who was in her head, like, that's just so familiar. So all these isolation things that I would do, it's just part of me, that's just what I would do. So I'm trying so hard to just be like, that's not what we do anymore. You can't become a different person, and whether you had a bad upbringing or something bad happened in a relationship, it doesn't define you. And I just spent so much of my life being like, well, this is it. 23 now, 27 now. Like, it's like, if I don't have it figured out, that's just me. And I've just figured out that's like,
I don't think anyone has it figured out.
No one has it figured out, but when you don't talk about it, you feel like it is. And I know for me, like, there's just evidence, like a missed job, then a shitty relationship, and then this, and then my mental health, and then you have rehab, and you have counsel, like, all these different things. It's like, you're a nobody, you're a loser, you're not going to get anywhere, like, and I've no self-worth, you're not enough. And these are just things that play in my head. And I looked at all these things that were happening in my life as evidence that you aren't going to get far, so there's no point even trying. So I gave up. You know, and I think that's one thing I feel like I'm so lucky that I've had a chance to turn things around. But, you know, when we talk even about the mental health, I've met people who, you know, didn't make it, and people who didn't have the support system that I had, and people who have been failed by the system and didn't have an education or haven't been given a purpose or any help, and now they're not here. You know, and I think it's like, I just feel like now the way my life has gone, it's like I have a chance and an opportunity to make sure that no one who I work with or no one that sees my Instagram, or even just for myself, it's just my biggest motivator to be like, you can do it. It's not going to be easy, it's going to be messy, it's going to be uncomfortable, but like, you have to give yourself a chance.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think you were saying this to me through Instagram, that obviously when you were trying to get help, that there was nowhere that would take you in Ireland, and you were actually struggling to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's why you had to go to Thailand.
Yeah.
Why?
So it happened. So when I was 15, I think it was when I struggled first. And I think I always say the people that scream the loudest, unfortunately, are the ones that get hurt. So when I was struggling with like self-harm and depression, I remember it was Pieta House that I used to go to for counselling. They're amazing. But I remember having conversations and I'm like, God, you're so lucky that you got bumped up to the top of the list. There's people that are waiting here for weeks. And at that time, I didn't understand. I was like, look, I'll get in here and I'll get out and it's whatever. And obviously, as I'm reflecting back, I'm like, there's something going on here. And then I think I had my first overdose at 17, and then I was in an outpatient unit, and then the same thing was happening there. It was like, oh, there's no spaces, all about spaces. And I was like, but surely, even as a child, I was like, you get help when you go to the doctor, you'll get an antibiotic, you'll come home. It just seemed like all of these things were really scarce, and you had to be someone, or you had to know someone to like get a place. So when it was a few years later and the same thing was happening, and I was going to counselling, and literally I remember going to the doctors that day, and I had planned, I was like, I think it was meant to be my last Christmas, and I was like, this is going to be my last Christmas, and I had planned actively to like not be here, and I was going just to kind of keep everyone happy, and I was going to just take probably a higher voltage or higher dose of my medication, and I ended up getting a different doctor that day who ended up just like, if I didn't get her, I don't know what would have happened. Yeah. But yeah, I was just being like really, really reckless in the car. Like I'd close my eyes for as long as I could. I was like, at that point, I just did not care about myself or anyone else. And she asked me that question of like, do you trust yourself to like drive home today? And I was like, it was the first time I kind of said it out loud, and I was like, no, I don't. And anyway, this all escalated into this thing, and I was in the car with my mum. I went straight to St. Pat's, and the whole thing happened of like, we need to give you a place. So I was on suicide watch. I was like actively not wanting to be here. This was like the current situation. And even at that point, they were like, we don't have spaces. So what do you tell someone? Now, I am so grateful that I had a family and a mum who would knock down doors and bring phone calls. She was not letting me go.
And did she know that that's exactly how you were feeling?
No, it was
then?
the car ride home over. We had a conversation. So I was driving to work that morning.
After the counselor service? Yeah,
so I was driving to work. Everything just happened so divinely. I was going to work that day, and I'll always remember where I was driving was Donabate, and there's like this tree lane, and I drive there every day to work, and it was the worst job ever, and I'd look over and it was like a bridge, and it was the first time I started to do these like reckless, like I just close my eyes and see how long I could do it, and then I get this rush, and I was like, it wasn't scary, and that was like the moment where I was like, oh, this is something that like I really feel like I'm actually going to carry out and do. And it kind of validated then this thing that I was like, no, this is right. You're not meant, like, if that's how you're feeling, that's meant to be right. And whatever. That day, I had to go to my doctor's appointment. And that was when she asked me. I just got a random new doctor that day who started to ask me these questions that no one had ever asked me before. And she had asked me and said, did you drive here today? And I said, yeah, I didn't tell her about that. And she was like, do you trust yourself to drive home today? And I was like, and I knew what had just happened that morning, and I was like, what? And I was like, no. And that's when my mum was called. She drove me then. I went to get like an analysis in St. Pat's. And yeah, the two of us in the car that day, we just had to have, I'll always remember, we had to have that conversation of, she knew that I'd be struggling, but at that point everyone was walking on eggshells around me. You know, like they didn't want to have the conversation, didn't know what was going on. I was like, I'm fine, everything's okay, like just leave me alone. And yeah, I'll always remember, I think I've said it before, but she just held my hand and just said, look, if you're not ready to fight or you're not able to fight, let me fight for you. And it's something that I'll always remember. Yeah. But sorry.
No, you're all right. Honestly,
yeah, it's something I'll always remember, because I just know no one has that. Not a lot of people do have that.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have my mum, I would have taken that as, again, if they said to me when I was so suicidal, I didn't want to be here, I would have just said, oh, you've no spaces, amazing, I'm just going to go and do it. Like, that's another piece of evidence to say that you're not meant to be here. Do you know? And I think there's so many people who are let down in the system because they don't have support or finances. No one had the money to put me through like 6 weeks or 2 months. It's expensive. It's like there's no support for people who are going through what they're going through. And even when you're going through something, it's like I was at the worst, I would have thought, and even at that they're like, well, do you have 6 weeks? So like to wait again. And my mum was like, we don't have 6 weeks, you know. So anyway, so that was that. And then so we didn't know what to do, and I think it was like I just remember going to Zara, and I was like, right, I got it in my head. I was like, I'm gonna go and we're gonna stay here for 2 months. I'm not working, but I said it's gonna be fine. No one needs to know. It's good. And then we obviously found out about the spaces, and then I think it was like 2 days later, Mum came down, and she had found a rehab centre in Thailand that had like a mental health track as well. And yeah, it was literally our only option. So within 2 days, we flew out, and they dropped me off. They flew home, and I was in Thailand for 2 months. Getting the help that I needed.
Did you find hard, like, I say that was obviously you found hard, but I mean as in like you're all of this on top of that, you have to go move to a different country. And what age were you then, did you say?
God, 23.
23, right?
Yeah, 22, 23. Yeah, I think there was a week where I was like in my head, I didn't talk to anyone, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I think it was November time or whatever it was, and I was like, do you know what, this is... I like really romanticized the idea of like me not being here. I genuinely thought it was the best thing. I was like in my notes section writing letters to people. This was what I was doing, and no one kind of knew but me. And I was like, it's fine, everything's good. And I was so at peace with the decision, and everything was the way it was meant to. And that one doctor, like if I never went to that doctor appointment, I wouldn't have went to St. Pat's. I wouldn't have found, like that week, within a week I was in Thailand. So I think from even just talking to that doctor, being like, I don't actually trust myself to drive home, was the first time. And then I had to have the conversation with my mum, and everything just became really real. And then I'm sitting in Thailand, in a country that I've never been, and there's like meth addicts, drug addicts, there's like trauma, PTSD, borderline personality disorder, there's all these different people, and I'm like, you can't. And again, I didn't put myself in a box. Even though I knew I was suicidal, I knew that I was depressed, I knew I had all these things. Being around other people, I was like, I'm not like them. How can you be putting me here? I'm fine. You know, and I'm sitting on my bed, and it just became so real what actually was happening and where I was, and I wasn't just on a holiday anymore. And that really knocked it kind of into me, like what was going on. I just knew, I was like, I'm getting out of here as quick as I can. So that was the job.
And you obviously, you went on your own, did you?
Yeah. Well, my mum and dad flew over with me, and they literally dropped me off, and I'll always remember I was screaming, crying. I was like, you can't leave me. I was like, what are you doing? There's this big like knocking and screaming, and yeah, they left. I just always remember just sitting on my bed, and I was like, and like little things, like they had taken my tweezers away, my razors away. I wasn't allowed on the top floor. Like I was sold this idea that I'd have a balcony that I could read and I could do. And I was like, no, we can't give you a balcony in case like you jump off. We have to take your razor and your medication. Like I had to ask them every single day to like, can I have my razor to shave my fucking armpits, like, or whatever. And I was like, why can't you give me a razor? And they're like, because everything was just so real. I was like, because what? Like I'm fine. And I wasn't. And like it was all these things. They took everything away. I was on medication. It was just like, what is actually going on? So yeah, I just had, to be fair, it was the best thing that I could have ever done, because it took me out of the bubble from at home, and the time zones were different. I wasn't on my phone. It was literally just me and my thoughts and help. I got really good help. And I met some incredible people, and something that we talk about judgment all the time. We'd sit there and I'd be around all of these incredible people who have struggled so much in their life, but they just looked like any average person. And I would have looked at people and like, oh, a drug addict would look this way. You know, someone who's struggling with depression would look that way. Someone who's anorexic would look this way. And these are just all normal people. And yeah, it was a weird moment that I was like, wow, people don't judge a book by its cover.
Or like, as you were mentioning, like the borderline personality disorder and other things. When you think of all these things, you think of what you see on the telly, and it's like, like the way they make it out to be. So you think if you're going to go into, I'd say you were thinking, where am I going?
Okay, I just remember my first night, I was on the bottom floor, and there was a woman, so I was right beside the reception, so there's rooms on either side. And I remember like having a little walk around, and I'd be with my psychiatrist and my doctor, and like, you know, it was a gated community, you weren't allowed to leave. This was like you for 2 months, and you'd have your food, your lunch and whatever. And yeah, there was a woman on her balcony, and I'll never forget it. She was coming down off meth, and she was screaming, and she was like a banshee, and I was like, what is going on? Who am I around? And I really just learned such compassion, not only just for myself, for being there and going through everything, but like for so many other people. Like a struggle is a struggle, you know. And I would have probably judged someone a few years ago, being like, God, how would they get themselves in that situation, or how would that happen to them? And I was in that situation, and it happened for me, you know. And it gave me so much understanding for what people go through. And yeah, that like you shouldn't judge other people for the situations that they get themselves in, and whether it is drugs or whether it's alcohol or food or mental health, it's like all masked under the same thing, You know, these are all just different coping mechanisms and different things that we fall into, but at the core, we're still struggling. And for a lot of people walking around, it shouldn't take, I hate that has to take for it to become something so big for you to be taken serious, or for you should have a problem so small to be able to be dealt with. Whereas now it's like you'll only get dealt with if you're like on the border of something, you know?
Yeah, I was actually only saying that with like, say, going to your doctor. Like certain things being brushed off until like, until you're in bits, or if you keep coming back with the same problem over and over and it's not going away, where like, say for example, like when I had before I found out I had MS, I think I was 16 going into the doctors.
Wow.
And then kept going in, and then I remember going in being like, here, like, what is
still not right?
Yeah, I was like, can I get a full body scan, because you clearly keep
listening.
Yeah. And then I kept going into A&E and they kept sending me home saying they don't know what's wrong with me. And then like when I asked for the full body scan, my doctor turned around and was just like, I think because I remember her saying that, she's like, you're 21, like laughing and smirking at me.
Other people, yeah,
you're 21, like why would you need a full body scan? You're all right, like. And then I kept going back, and then when I went in,
I've heard that story so many times to people.
Yeah, and like when I went in this time, it was weird. Like it was like she jumped up, had a scans thing of like exactly what's wrong, like giving me this like. She basically diagnosed an illness that wasn't even that illness.
Yeah.
And was like, I'm pretty sure this is what you have. You need to go into A&E and you can't leave until... And I was like, what? And then I went into A&E and they still couldn't tell me what was wrong. And then I was like, do you know what? I'm actually just not going to live. But they actually turned around and were like, do you know what? Because you've came in so many times, we want you to stay in overnight. And then come when they done the scans, they found out. But I was like... Because the way MS is, it's like lesions on your brain and your spine. And then obviously now that since I'm on the medication, that the lesions don't progress. But you're like, if that was caught when I was going in,
would they have progressed that bad?
Yeah, like it's not like they're only. I'm fine, like thank God. Like obviously there's other people who have MS and they're 10 times worse.
Yeah.
But like it's probably done other things to me that I probably don't even realise.
100%.
Like say like with
you probably spend so much of your life thinking, is there something wrong with me? Like they're telling me that they're not. You think you're going crazy, and you should be able to go somewhere and be backed and have. Just not brushed away as quick.
Yeah, they should be like, if you say something and it could be whatever, outline everything else, do all the checks.
Yeah, I agree.
And like test for everything, and then if it's nothing, then it's nothing. Until
they wait till it gets so big. Now I do believe
and the same
that,
thing I feel like with mental health, they'll brush it off, or they brush everything off until like
it wrecks my head. Like I even when I was going through stuff was like. And I don't know for certain, I still don't. And I'm so weird with labels now, not only of myself. I've lived so much being like, I'm not able to do this. Like, again, you're limiting beliefs. But when I struggled with something, it was like, there's antidepressants. And they were like, you're clinically depressed. I was like, okay, like whatever. Then it was like, oh, there's a lot of anxiety going here. That's cool. Then I was struggling with drink, and straight away it was like, you're an alcoholic. And you have to go to AA meetings and da. And I was like, what? It was like anything you say was like a label. And I was like, no, surely not. And I remember them saying that to me. And then I went away and it was like borderline personality disorder. And I literally turned around and I was like, 1 minute it's depression, then it's anxiety, then it's borderline BPD. Like
so they say that to you when you were in Thailand?
Yeah, and everyone's trying to suss out what's going on. I'm like, do you know what? And that's where my level of resistance came, because I was like, stop putting labels on me and just trying to figure out what's actually... I don't care. If I have ADHD, if I have depression, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. And I think for a lot of my life, I was waiting for this final label of like, this explains everything, and I don't know if I'll ever get that, but it doesn't matter. I'm like, I just need to know how I can like get, like, even for you're like, whether you do or you don't, you need to improve your quality of life. So give me something, tell me what I need to do so I can improve that, instead of just saying, here's a little label and we'll just push it off and then we'll, just live by it. And I think that and you go to these people in like professional services and you put your trust in them, when actually you should just be trusting yourself and going off your own judgment. Yeah, exactly. I feel like you kind of know. Like they do say now, there's people probably that are hypochondriac. It's probably all of us, isn't it? And they think there's something wrong with them when there's not, and they're just wasting their time. They're probably trying to avoid that. But look at yourself. Like you kept pushing, now you got an answer. Do you know? Yeah, about 5 years later. But if you have a gut instinct about something, I'm like, follow through on it. Yeah, exactly. Thanks so much for coming on, Hannah. It's all my love. And honestly, I hope you never have to go through anything like that again. Appreciate it. Because you're absolutely stunning and amazing. There's not one thing wrong with you, so don't be giving yourself any of that negative talk. Thank you. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks so much for having me.